Hello and welcome to this short presentation. My name's Alex and I'm one of the roving chefs who work for Vegetarian for Life. So thank you for joining me. This week is Nutrition and Hydration Week. And it also happens to be today Global Tea Party Day. So if you're celebrating that, this is certainly a presentation you will be interested in. So what I want to do today is to talk about a new booklet, which is the Vegan Texture Modified booklet, which has got lots of information if you're catering for somebody that's following a vegan diet or somebody that wants to try a vegan diet that may have dysphagia. It's got lots of information in here about the IDSI guidance and guidelines, and I'll be going through that in a little bit more detail as we go along. I also want to, because it's Global Tea Party Day, I want to also talk about ways that you can implement changes in the way that you create your dishes so that it's suitable for people with dysphagia. I'm going to explain what IDSI means. Now, if you're familiar with this, that's great. And if this is just the first introduction to that, then that's fine. But what I would recommend is that you look at the IDSI site directly to follow up from the information that I'm giving you today, because this is only going to be a short presentation. So I don't want you to think that this is going to be the be all and end all of that, but I will sort of give you a flavour of what it's about. So what is IDSI? What does it stand for? Well, I'm just going to put my glasses on so I make sure that I read it properly. It's the International Dysphagia Diet Standardization Initiative. Okay, so what that means, right, it's really important. It's been adopted by 30 countries, I think maybe a few more now. So it's a global phenomenon. And what it's about is standardizing how we describe the texture and flow of drink and food. And what that means is that we have levels starting from 0 through to 7, so there are actually eight levels, starting with fluids, and then gradually, as a continuum, moving up towards food sort of puree and slightly thicker with sort of small pieces in, and through to sort of almost what you might describe as sort of like everyday normal eating. Now, what's really good about this is that it's standardized. So that means that if you had dysphagia and you were advised or told to follow level 3, then that means that it doesn't matter whether you're in Scotland or Birmingham or London or Manchester or France or Canada or India, you'll still be given the same consistency of food. Different items within there, but it'll be the same consistency. So that really helps, because obviously, people move around the globe, people move around the country, and it standardizes that. So that's really important. Now, the IDSI is aimed at everybody, okay? Anyone that experiences dysphagia, so that's children through to adults. Now, there is a difference between the advice for children and for adults, and that's to do with the size of particle, a food particle, towards the sort of the top end of the pyramid. Because the windpipe is slightly smaller for a child, so the pieces need to be slightly smaller to prevent a blockage. So that's kind of one of the differences between adults and children. But I'm going to focus in on adults today. I'm also going to show you how to make a number of dishes. Now, the dishes I'm going to show you how to make are in our new booklet, which is the Vegan Texture Modified Guide. Now, if you're watching this and you're in a care setting and you're on our UK list, you will have already been sent this booklet. Now, if you haven't got it or you've not seen it, visit the office and see if it's been tucked away somewhere. And if you haven't got it, then do get in contact and we'll send you another one. It's free to all our UK members, but we do ask, beyond that, we ask for a small contribution towards costs, just a couple of quid towards postage, so that we can send them out and keep things going. But it really is a very useful and practical guide. Now, obviously, it's also on our website as well. So if you go onto our website, you can just have a look at that, obviously, for free immediately. So do have a look at that. But inside it, we've got information on the causes of dysphagia. Now, you may think I'm sort of skipping along a little bit. I am. I really want to get to some cooking, but I just want to give you a little bit of a flavour of what it is. So we've got information on the pyramids. I don't know if you can sort of see that. Starting with 0 through to 7. So 0 being thin liquids, almost like water, and then moving up to regular foods at 7. So this goes into details with that. We've also got the testing methods that you will need when testing whether the food that you've created does in fact fit that level. And it's very important that you actually test the food as it's being served or at the situation that it will be served. So if you were to test something to see whether it was the right consistency in your kitchen, but it wasn't going to get served until the next day, then obviously the texture consistency may change, particularly if the temperature changes. So if you've got a soup or something like that, as it gets colder, it might get thicker. So the level that it should be at will change. So it's very important to test it at the point when it's being served, but also to make sure you follow the guidelines as it's set down in IDSI. And they really are quite straightforward. It might be a bit of a learning curve to begin with, but it really is quite straightforward once you get your head around it. The next thing in here are some absolutely fabulous, simple recipes that you can make, and it spans all of the levels in here. So we've got some breakfast suggestions here, so a nice easy to make porridge. We've also got a peanut butter and banana milkshake, which I'll be showing you how to make shortly. And also moving on, we've got some soups. I'll show you to make one of these soups, and some curries, and finally we've got some desserts. So I'm going to show you how to make a couple of these desserts towards the end. So, and I will talk a little bit more about IDSI as we go along, and how you test, and some of the equipment that you might need. But I want to start off by getting with the first dish prepared, which is a really lovely butternut squash soup. So if I just bring up my tray of ingredients here, switch this on, excuse for the beep, it will always beep when I switch this on. So this soup is a really hearty soup. Now I've made this several times for lots of people, and it's always been received well. So when you're creating a dish, so let's switch that on, that's better. When you're creating a dish and you think, well, you've got to make it specific to an IDSI level, you think, well, am I only going to produce that for one person that you cater for that's got that? It doesn't have to be the case. For things like soups, everybody can enjoy it. That you care for, that can swallow normally. But those that have got dysphagia and they're following a set level, obviously they can enjoy it well. And it becomes more inclusive. So you've not got that separate dish for a person. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more as we go along. But let's get this soup in. So you'll find the recipe on our website and also in the booklet. So first things first, we're going to start to put in some onions. Now, this is going to get blended at the end. I couldn't serve this as a chunky soup. It just wouldn't work. I've got onions in here which are quite fibrous, and they can create a choking hazard. So everything here needs to be thoroughly pureed and then put through a sieve to make sure that you pick out every tiny last bit of of seeds or pips or any kind of tool that may create a little choking hazard. Now, I'm going to speed this thing a little bit faster than you would normally cook, just to kind of give you the impression of how it's cooked. So our onions, if you can imagine, we've cooked our onions for about 5 minutes or so, just to give them a nice bit of colour. Into that, I've got some sweet potatoes. Now, peel the sweet potatoes. And also, I've got some butternut squash. In we go with the butternut squash. And some carrots. In we go with that. And also, I've got some spices. So, just because you're catering for somebody who, actually, has dysphagia, so has a swallowing issue, doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to have all the lovely flavours that food has. And obviously, you want to try and encourage people to eat healthy food, and part of that is for food to look appetizing, but also to be appetizing. So this is one of the sort of main dishes that we've created. So I've got here some spices. So I've got a little salt here. I've also got some turmeric. I've got some cumin, and I've got some coriander. And these are all ground, pre-ground, not whole seeds. Whole seeds may create a choking hazard. Even though I'm going to blend it and I'm going to put it through a sieve, you still need to be very careful. I'm also putting here some garlic puree. So in we go with that. Give it a bit of a stir. And so that it smells lovely already. It's the onions and the cumin. I'm a big fan of cumin. So into that I've got some lentils. So the lentils are going to be providing obviously some fibre. There's plenty of fibre in all the veggies, of course, but it's also going to put in some protein as well. So it's quite a balanced dish, and it's going to look really, really lovely. To that, I'm going to add some oat milk. You could put water in if you wanted, or stock. I will put some stock powder in as well. You can put oat milk in here, or you can put coconut milk in there, and it just kind of makes it nice and rich. So in we go with that. We're also going to pop in some stock powder, and let me just move this out of the way. 1 moment. There we go. Lovely. So that's just going to simmer away and do its own thing. And when it's completely cooked, I will be able to blend it and then put it through a sieve. Now, I've got the butternut squash here because I just wanted to highlight a couple of things when you're preparing food. Because on some of the levels, you can have chunks, okay, but it needs to be chunks that don't have big amounts of or high amounts of fibrous materials. So with the skin, if you were going to serve this as a mash at the side, or as some pieces as a good vegetable, you couldn't have the skin on here, because obviously there's a contrast between the softness of the flesh when it's cooked and the texture of the skin when it's cooked. So you will need to take that away. And obviously it's got seeds in here. I can't see them, but it's obviously got seeds in there as well. And those all need to be removed. So you've got to be particularly careful when you're preparing food for somebody that has dysphagia, and when you're following the guidance from IDSI. So it is one of those things you do need to take that extra bit of care and time when you're preparing those dishes. But once you've got your head around it, once you sort of start to get it becomes familiar, it is relatively straightforward. So pop that to one side. So what sort of equipment will you need when you're preparing food for the various levels? Well, what has been very useful is that you should be able to do it with relatively easy equipment that you might have to hand. So certainly a blender. I know this is only the base of a blender, but certainly a blender. Now the blender should be quite powerful. So if it's like a RoboCoupe machine, something that's really quite powerful that can absolutely make sure that your soup or your stew or whatever it is you're blending does get to be really, really fine and a lovely puree. So a stick blender can work, but I would not recommend this for all the levels because it's just not powerful enough to make sure everything it has been blended thoroughly. So using a stick blender, it can be an option, but I would recommend using something a little more powerful, like a NutriBullet or something like that. Something that's really going to make sure that it's blended properly. The next thing is to be aware of is making sure that you are accurate with your ingredients. Now, the scales here. The point is to test your dish at the end. So you can follow a recipe. And depending what one person makes it in a pan so big and somebody makes it in a pan so big, the amount of liquid that evaporates will obviously be different. If somebody's got the power on slightly higher or slightly lower, then it's going to have more or less liquid in there, and so that's going to affect the consistency of that. So the important thing is to test it when you're finished, when you've got to the point that it's going to get served. That's when you test it and then adjust it to make sure that it fits in with the level that you're going for. Having said that, starting off by measuring the ingredients properly is the right way to go about it. So having some scales. I know often when I'm cooking at home, I just put things in the pan and let it do its own thing, and that's fine. However, when you're catering with somebody that's got dysphagia and you're making sure that you get to those specific levels, it is important to follow the recipe. But that's only the start. It's the testing part at the end that counts. Now, for full information on the testing, do visit the IDSI website. However, I just want to sort of go through briefly some of the ways that you can do it. Now, for liquids, and they try and make it as simple as possible, which is excellent. Using a straw is a handy indication of how thick or thin a liquid is. So if something is very thin, it will pass very easily through a straw, and slightly thicker, it will just take a little bit more, it will go through it, but it just takes that little bit more effort. But, my effort, your effort, they're going to be different. So what you can also have, and I don't have one to show you today, is a syringe, and it's the drip flow test. And what you do is you put your liquid in there and you measure out the number of drips that come through the syringe, and depending on the consistency of your liquid, it will either drip faster or more slowly, and that will give you a more accurate measure of how thick a dish is. I've also seen at various training centres sticks that look a little bit. This isn't one of them. It looks a bit like this. And what you do is you place it in, and then it will fall over. So imagine that's a liquid. If you pop it in there and it was just water, it would just go like that. But if it's much thicker, it will just take its time to fall over slowly. And that's another very simple way of measuring the consistency. Another very simple way is to use a spoon. Use a fork. And you should, for the soft food, is to be able to easily just press your fork through the food, so it's nice and soft and bite-sized. The other thing is about the size of the particle. 15 millimeters for adults. Now that is roughly the space between the two forks, roughly. So if it'll go through, then it's smaller than 15. So that's another little guide. You can also have it on with a spoon and and you just be able to tip it straight off the end of the spoon. It's another simple way of doing it. The IDSI is not trying to make it harder for you. It's trying to make it easier for you. but you do need to practice. You do need to get used to it so you're not skipping things along. I know today I've sort of moved through things quite quickly because I really want to talk about some of the dishes and how to prepare them. So let's move on from that. I'll pop this to one side for the moment. I'm also going to pop this soup. I've got a cooker. You can't see it, it's just over there. I've got a little cooker over there. So I'm going to pop that on there and let that do its own thing for the next 15 minutes or so. Yeah, sorry for disappearing like that. I was juggling with my cooker over there. So if you're planning a tea party, so the things that you might have on a tea party would be obviously tea and sandwiches and bread, stuff like that. So let me just sort of go through some of the problems that you may face and hopefully come up with a few suggestions of how to solve them. So if you're having sandwiches, you're likely to have bread. So there's other ways to make sandwiches without bread, but never mind. So bread is not recommended for anyone following an IDSI diet, as it is as a whole loaf or a slice, for lots and lots of good reasons. I have seen some videos where people can process the breadcrumbs and then puree it. So do have a look out for that. But as it is, it's not recommended at all, for whichever level you are. Now, there's going to be exceptions to the rule with people with the way that they swallow, and they may be able to manage or they may not be able to. But the general rule is bread is not suitable. Now, there's lots of reasons for that. It has multiple textures in here. We've got seeds on the outside, which obviously could create irritation and may cause a choking hazard. The outside of the bread is hard. The inside, so I can slice this, the inside is softer, so you get a different texture inside from here, bearing in mind that the food should have almost the same consistency as a serving. You shouldn't have multiple textures. So with just like an ordinary piece of bread, we've got that. Also, this gets, I can scoop a bit out. It gets all sticky as well, which can also be a problem. So bread is an issue. So if you're going to have sandwiches, does that mean that we shouldn't invite people that have got dysphagia to the group because to the party because they can't have sandwiches? Well, of course not. You can still have a delicious soup. You can go with that. You can still have some lovely desserts. It's about inclusion, and it's about sort of thinking through the process. So bread is one to avoid. Fruits that have got seeds in is another sort of problem, particularly something like tomato. So with tomato, we've got all sorts of issues going on with this. We've got seeds inside the tomato. We've got flesh, and we've got sort of more of a watery part here. We've also got the skin. So lots of problems with that that can cause choking. So another one to avoid. Lettuce. I will have some good news towards the end. Lettuce or things like that. Again, this really so innocent, but it really can cause choking hazards. So it's another one to watch out for. Now, do have a look, and I've mentioned this before, but do have a look on the IDSI site for more information on what foods are suitable and what on the level. Common things like jam. Okay, you might think, well, I'll make a porridge and I'll follow the IDSI guidelines and I'll get it to the correct consistency, but I'll stir in some jam. Always do that. However, if it's got any seeds in here, then that's going to be another choking hazard or potential choking hazard. So it's one to avoid. You may be able to get a jam that doesn't have any seeds in it, or you can put it through a sieve, but as it stands, you can't do it because it's got those little seeds in there. Other foods that have got multiple textures, things like cream cakes. You've got the softness of the cream in here, which just on its own, when you pop it into the mouth, it's going to melt and it's going to change. So that's maybe an issue. We've also got the pastry, which can potentially cause a choking hazard as well. Even things like a little apple pie can also, even though the pastry is soft, can also potentially be hazardous, particularly when, let's open this up, particularly when you've got pieces of fruit in here, such as a bit of apple and blackcurrant or whatever's in there. So there are lots of things, lots of foods that you may or serve day to day, but when you're catering for someone that's got dysphagia and you're following the IDSI guidelines, you really need to start to go back to basics on that. But once you've done that, it really is straightforward. Now, when it comes to presentation, if you've not created any dishes before following these guidelines, you may find it a little bit challenging because the usual things that chefs like to have are height, obviously colour, and contrast of textures. Well, we can't have contrast of textures particularly. It's not easy to create height when you've got something that's very, very soft, and certainly no little bits of herb on the top, because it's another choking hazard. So you need to sort of rethink it a little bit. So if you were to make a cottage pie or a shepherd's pie, on my booklet, if you serve that in a dish, and that an individual dish, then that will give it its height. And if you serve the other people that you care for in the same dish, from the outside, initially it will look the same, so it becomes a little bit more inclusive. If you're creating, what have we got here? If you're creating little puddings, rather than have it, sort of like a spoonful on a plate, if you put it into a glass, it just gives it a little bit of height. It starts to play around with your perception of what the food looks like. And of course, if something looks appetizing and it tastes appetizing, then people are more likely to want to eat it. Okay, right, let's move on. So the next thing I want to show you how to make is a very simple milkshake. Now, just turn that down a fraction. Now, the reason that I've chosen to show you how to make this milkshake is because in our guide, find the right page, we've got the recipe set up. There we are. We've got the recipe set up so that you can create various levels depending on the ingredients that you put into it. But it's relatively straightforward to make. So you will need some plant-based milk, making this vegan. So you can use oat milk, you could use soy milk. Soy milk has got a little bit more protein than the other plant-based milk, but that's certainly, it will work with any of them, but it's just soy milk has got a little bit more protein. We've also got some banana. Now, this banana is not ideal because you can see it's a little bit green. It's not super ripe. I want things to be nice and soft and blend easily. So if you can get a riper one, that would work well. Now, I'm making a peanut butter and chocolate milkshake. So I've got some peanut butter here. And this is smooth peanut butter. You can't use chunky because obviously crunchy, because obviously those little parts are going to create choking hazards, whereas if you've got a smooth one, there's less chance of doing so. And also I have some cocoa powder. Not drinking chocolate, create something that's vegan, so it's cocoa powder. You can also put a little bit of vanilla if you like in there. If you want to make it a bit sweeter, you can. So what we need is our blender. Now I do apologise. I'm going to make a little bit of noise with this. So what we do is we pop our ingredients into the blender. So that's our cocoa powder and our peanut butter. There we go. And our banana. In like so. And we'll pop our lid on. Now this isn't. This is obviously a NutriBullet, not just a stick blender, because you wouldn't be able to get the. You won't be able to get it to be as smooth as it needs to be. So do apologise about the noise. So on we go with this. A little bit of a shake, and one more. So this should, if I tip this out, I should be able to put this through a straw nice and easily. So it is slightly thick. So it's not water, it's just slightly thick. But I also want to make sure that I haven't got any tiny bits in there. So by using a fine sieve, the finest sieve that you've got, it will just take out those last particles that you may have. So let's get a glass and we can pop some of our mixture in, like so. There we go. So the other thing is, so we do our test on now with the drip test, or but if this is going to be put to one side, then the consistency before it's served, the consistency may change. So you need to test it obviously now, but also just before it's being served. So if you make this ahead of time, then it needs to be retested, shall I say, before it's served. And I wouldn't really want to leave this for very long anyway. I want to have it straight away. So that's our first one. Now you can, by adjusting the amount of banana in there, and also towards the end when you get to level 4, when you make it nice and thick, you can put soya protein in there, and so you can create from this very simple recipe from level 1 to level 4. So if you've got people that you care for on that need various levels, from the outside it will all look the same. So it's quite, it's an inclusive thing to have. Obviously you've got to make sure that you give the correct level to the person that needs it, but it means that everyone can have the same drink. It becomes a little bit more inclusive. So that's just one very, very simple recipe that you might want to give a try to. Give a try. So that have a look in our booklet for all the recipes for that version of that, but also you'll find it on our website as well. So do look there. So really easy start. The next one I want to show you. Again, I'm going to make a little bit of noise. I do apologise about that. It's kind of the nature of it, really. Is a mango cheesecake. Really, again, very easy to make. So I will need my ingredients here. So I've got some vegan ginger biscuits here. Now, one of the things that I said at the start was that you can't have, or you shouldn't have, contrasts of textures. However, you can have contrasts of colours, and this is what we're going to do with this one. So I have ground up the biscuit, so I've not got any chunky bits. It's all ground. So we're going to start to put that into our little presentation, and it, it can be quite small. So if you've got something like this, I think this is an old Goo, the brand Goo. It's an old one of those. So all you do is to pop some of your, excuse me, some of your biscuits into the bottom like so. I'll just do one. And then we're going to make our mixture and then put it onto the top. So it really is an easy thing to do. Just rinse out the container. Sorry for disappearing. So our ingredients, we've got mango. Now this is you can get this in a tin, and it needs to be pureed. It needs to be absolutely superbly smooth. We're at real danger of having fibrous materials in here which we don't want at all. So we need to make sure that it's very, very smooth. So in we go with our mango. We've also got some silken tofu. Now, silken tofu is a real useful product when you're making dishes that fit in with the ITZY framework. It's nice and soft. It will sort of reset once you've blended it, so you can get different textures with it. It doesn't, and the plain version, it has no flavour, so that you can add things to it. So you can make it sweet or you can make it savoury. In we go with that, and it is readily available from wholesalers and also from supermarkets, so you can get hold of it. But that's the silken one. It's not the firm, it's the silken one, which is the softest. We've also got some maple syrup, and we go with that. It's going to make it lovely and sweet. It's a cheesecake, so I've got some vegan cream cheese. Now, do make sure that you get the plain version, not one that's got flavouring. Obviously, I know it's an easy thing to, of course you're not going to do that. But if you're shopping quickly or you're ordering quickly, they come with garlic and herbs and stuff like that. So obviously a plain one. We've also got some soya cream in there. So all we do is to pop the lid on like so. Make sure that it's thoroughly blended. You do need to be careful with this. You can put it through a sieve again. If there's any danger of any little bits of fibre still left in there. Now then, I said at the start that you can't have contrasts of textures. So if this was, let me just pop this on the top here. Let's put our mixture onto the top, like so. So as you can see, or hopefully you can see, it is nice and soft, like that, lovely and soft. So if I was to serve that like that, it wouldn't work at all, because all this biscuit here is still very dry. Now, if you set this in the fridge overnight, what will happen is that the liquid from the moisture from the top part will soak into the base, and it'll all be nice and soft. However, if you want to speed things up a little bit, if you've retained some of the juice from the mango, then you can sprinkle a little bit of juice onto the base to make sure that it is actually wet. If you've got any doubt at all, then you could leave the biscuit off if you didn't want to put that in, because the actual mixture itself is really lovely. So what you get there by putting it into one of these little ramekins is you've got that height. So it's just starting to give that a lift with presentation. And of course, there's nothing wrong with this. It's a lovely dish, so everybody can enjoy it, whether they have dysphagia or not. It's just a lovely pudding. Now the temptation would of course be to put maybe some chocolate shavings on the top, but that's then creating a choking hazard, so you can't do that. Similarly with that classic bit of chopped parsley on the top, can't do that. You've got to be disciplined, chefs. You really have. So there we have our second dish. So it's a lovely little mango cheesecake. So Can't serve this straight away, just to reinforce that, because this is still dry. It needs to soak through, so it's completely sodden. So from the outside, it will still look like this, but the middle, but when you actually taste it, test it, the base is soft, and all this liquid has soaked in. So that's our little cheesecake. So the next dish that I want to show you is it's a little chocolate pudding, a little chocolate mousse. Now, on our website, we've got various sort of similar things. However, do make sure if you're catering for somebody that has dysphagia, or you're creating for a specific level, that you make sure that you get the right recipe. And it is clearly labelled, but it's just one thing just to bear in mind. So for this one, again, we're using, I get my container. Again, we're using the silken tofu. So silken tofu, if you're not familiar with using it, or tofu generally, this is again the silken one. Is a good source of calcium. It's also got lots of protein in there, so it's quite healthy. There's a small amount of fibre in there as well, so it is quite a healthy food to use. And again, because it's plain, we can make it chocolatey, or we can make it sweet, or you can make it savoury, whichever way you want to do it. Now, it is the silken one, not the firm one, so do look out for that. So also we're going to put in some cocoa powder and a little bit of vanilla, and we're making it a bit sweeter by putting in some golden syrup. Again, towards the end of this this jar, I need to get some more, but I've got enough just to give it a bit of a squirt. There we go. Ah, will do. Lovely. And our banana. Can move that out of the way. So again, do measure the ingredients, but it's not just that part that you need to do, it's the testing. That's the crucial bit. It's the test at the end. Obviously, if you follow the recipe, it should be right or thereabouts, but it's the last bit that really makes the difference to see whether it's suitable or not. So all we do with this, let's pop this in here, give it a good blend. I do apologise. This must be a right racket when I switch this on, but this is what you have to do. So if you are catering for someone, you will be using processors and stick blenders and all sorts of things. So it's kind of, it really is as it is. So let me give this a bit more of a whiz. So. Nearly there. Nearly done. There we go. Enough of that. So what we end up with is a really lovely, get a spoon, really lovely pudding that anyone can enjoy. It's not just if you have swallowing difficulties, it really is lovely. And again, just to sort of reinforce, the temptation would be to put on grated chocolate on the top, but of course that's going to cause a choking hazard. So there we have our lovely little chocolate pud, nice and straightforward, easy to make, and it's something that everyone can enjoy. So that's our two little puddings. Let's have a look at our soup. So we'll bring our soup back and see what that's up to. So the soup has been bubbling away in the background nicely. So let's see whether this is ready to go or not. Yeah, almost ready to go. So all I'm going to do is, just to make my life a little bit easier, add a fraction more liquid to that, and then I'm going to use my stick blender to blend this one. Because the ingredients are quite soft, I'm going to use that. So bear with me with the noise, and this really is the last time I'm going to make noise like this. I should really have some music in the background. When I make this racket, it should like dip down and, like, you know, pleasant music playing, or kind of the noise of a stream going by, or something like that. But let's make sure this is thoroughly mixed up. There we are. Now, you might think, oh, that's fine, you can do that and you can serve it and it's fine, but it's still going to have, despite me peeling the ingredients, it's still going to have little bits of veg in there that hasn't quite blended. So, very important to pop it through a sieve. So I've got my fine sieve here. So if I then just carefully I'll put it all through, but I'll just put enough through like so. And of course, by putting it through the sieve and into another pot, that's going to make it cooler, and that's going to change the consistency. So we'll then need to reheat this before I serve it. And the temptation would be to put a swirl of cream on the top, but unfortunately you can't do that. And it does take a little of that steam. It does take a little bit of extra time when you're preparing foods for various ITZY levels. But once you get used to it, it really is something that isn't that difficult. You need to have care, obviously, and you need to make sure that anyone that's involved with the preparation of foods for these levels is thoroughly trained, but also for the people that are serving your foods, they know exactly what they're doing as well. In case the food needs to be just retested just before it's served, depending on, you know, where you work or who you're catering for. So in we go with that. Now I do want to just tell you that I've been making this soup over the past month or so, and we're serving it to lots of different people. I think there's about 300 people, and it's always been well received. So just because it's a food that's set to an ITZY level, it doesn't mean to say that everyone can't enjoy it or shouldn't enjoy it, because it really is just, you know, it's just a lovely, lovely dish. So by the time you've got your food blended and pop it through a sieve and all the other things, you will end up losing a little bit. You know, be a bit stuck inside the blender and some around here. So if you make a little bit extra, then you'll make sure that you'll have enough to serve everybody. So let's just pop that last bit in. And I'll just lift this up just to show you that I have still got some lumps and bumps in there. So as you can see, you know, hopefully you can see there's still sort of lumps and bumps in there, and of course that would not be suitable. So let's just pop that over there. And there we have. I'll just pop it into a bowl, and you can see it a little bit better. So if I was serving this now, I'd need to test it now. If it was going to be made ahead of time, then you need to, before you serve it, you need to actually reheat it and then test it. Very important that happens. What we end up with is a delicious, beautiful soup. And I'll bring this over so you can have a look at that. So you end up with something that looks like that. Really, you know, today, where you're watching this today, but it's very overcast, and despite it being, I think, officially spring-ish, it still feels quite wintry. So, you know, it'll be a nice, hopefully it'll be a welcome addition to somebody's meal times to have something warm like that. So what we've done today, we've looked at the Itty booklet that we've got, our new one. So that's the vegan textured modified dish. So vegan texture modified recipes. We've got information on the Itty guidance. So I do recommend looking at the Itty website to make sure that you're very familiar with that, and get training as well to make sure that you and your staff, or if you're whoever you catering for, know exactly what they're doing. We've got some lovely recipes in here. We've got a lovely porridge. We've even got a cooked breakfast. If you're interested in doing that, again, you know, it does take a little bit of extra time to prepare these dishes, but once you get into the swing of it, it really is quite straightforward. You've just got to follow the principles of it, rather than the recipes just to the letter. It's the testing part at the end, and as long as you're careful, you know, you'll be able to create some wonderful dishes that look tasty, but also are very nutritious. You know, if you have got a dysphagia, you've got swallowing difficulties, then it can lead to poor nutrition, malnutrition, and so the greater effort that if you're a caterer you put into making sure that your food looks nice and it is balanced in terms of nutrition, the better really for everyone. So there's the soup. I don't know whether you can see both of the same. If I lift that forward, does it look like the picture? Yeah, it does. Thereabouts. One other dish I just want to show you, which is sweet potato hot pot as well, which is quite an interesting one. Is a lasagna. Now, pasta for most levels isn't acceptable as part of the diet. Now, this is a pureed one, so this is level 4. And what this is a colleague of mine, Justina, who's developed this one, did an absolutely fantastic job with this. It uses polenta as the pasta part, and it's that ready cooked. You get in a block polenta. Just take a little bit of time to do it, but it doesn't take forever to do it. So if you're creating, some lovely lasagnas for the people that you care for and cater for, then there's no reason why you can't create a lovely lasagna fitting in with level 4. That it really is a lovely dish. Definitely worth having a go. We've also got a vegetable terrine, it's just nice and lovely, and we've got our dishes that I made before, which I'll bring up. So one last thing to mention in terms of nutrition. Do have a look on our website. We've got lots of information on nutrition. We've also got this booklet, which is Nutrition for Older Vegetarians and Vegans, and that's BDA approved. So if you are on our UK list, you will have got this automatically. If you're not a member, if you're watching this from a care establishment and you're not a member, do get in touch. It is a very straightforward process to become a member, and it's free if you take the basic membership. If you take the premium membership, there is a small charge. However, what it means is that you're going to receive any new materials that we produce automatically. So it really is worth looking into, and it's not it really doesn't take that much time to do so. So I recommend you have a look at that. So Two booklets for today to highlight is our vegan texture modified, and also our nutrition for vegetarians and vegans. So let's just bring our little dishes back. So we've got our cheesecake, and we've got our soup, and we've also got our lovely milkshake, which I'm going to enjoy just as soon as we finish. So I hope you found this interesting. If you've not subscribed already, please do subscribe. And I thank you for your time today. Take care. Bye-bye.